Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. With me today is Dr. Laura Batson calling in from Canada. Dr. Laura is a naturopathic doctor, an initiated African diviner in the Dagara traditions of West Africa, and an African circular cosmologist. It is such an honor to have you on today, Dr. Laura. Welcome on.
Thank you, Peter. Such an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So we got a really interesting podcast lined up for you. Some of the topics we'll go through is nonlinear consciousness, the Dagara Divination, the elemental wheel of West African traditions, soul purpose through these teachings, and diversifying spiritual spaces. So I'm really excited. I feel like I'm going to learn a lot in this episode. And I would love to start the podcast off by inviting you to share kind of how your awakening journey started and evolved.
Mm, Thank you. Yeah, I love telling this story. It goes back to um, when I was about 19, 20. It's my first year university.
Hmm.
And I grew up agnostic, atheist. There was no spirituality or religion at all in my
Hmm.
upbringing. So I was a staunch scientist, mechanistic scientist, and I was on my way to medical school, or
Hmm.
so I thought.
Right.
So in first year university, walking through campus, and I just heard these words, "You don't have to come back next year."
Mm.
And I didn't know where it was coming from, and I was just like, I started talking back and being, well, of course I'd come back. Like, I love school. I always come back to school. And it just kept saying, yeah, but you don't have to. I was like,
Mm.
I guess I don't have to. And it was just like the first time that ever occurred to me
Right.
that I didn't have to go to school the next year.
Yeah.
And so I didn't. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm just going to take a year off. And in my mind, it was just this innocent decision to take a year off, enjoy life, because I was going to come back and 10 more years of medical school to go through. So why don't I just enjoy life for a year?
Hmm.
Well, of course, I took a year off and then everything exploded in my world. And
Yeah.
soon realized that that voice was not just, some whimsical thing coming out of nowhere, but was my spirit teacher.
Hmm.
Um, and I refer to her as spirit grandmother. And she just kept talking to me throughout that year. It took me a while before I acknowledged her as spirit, but she kept talking to me in these riddles of curvature and nonlinearity and kept telling me to step off the line. And the straight line memorizes itself, but the circle remembers itself.
Mm.
And you're made in the language of curvature. You're made to remember what you're made of.
Hmm.
Okay, what does that mean? And
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
spent, yeah, a lot of time just, downloading these. And often it would come when I was making art. I started making this, what I call curve art. And so it's just this black ink on white paper. So
Oh,
I
amazing.
put a book together of it, yeah. And as I would be drawing these curves, she would start talking to me about curvature and nonlinearity and, yeah, how do you get out of these boxes and lines of your colonial upbringing? Um, and so that was happening. And then I started to get these little inklings towards Taoism and Eastern philosophies as I was reading the Tao Te Ching and talking about, the flow and the way. And it sounded very similar to the curves that Spirit Grandmother was talking about, these
Yeah.
non ways and the paradoxes that she would often bring forth. Um, to be full, you have to be empty. If you want to um, hit the hit the bullseye, you can't aim for the target or something like that. Or you want to get the target, don't hit the bullseye. I'm like, what? And so,
Yeah.
but you would find that these like Eastern philosophies, there'd be these paradoxes and nonlinear kind of ways of thinking.
Yeah.
And there's also that I was making in the art and Spirit Grandmother was saying. Um, and so then that, yeah, led me off to Nepal, India, hanging out in the mountains, doing the whole Himalaya trek and
Whoa.
yeah, the Annapurna Himalaya trek. and just hanging out with the monks in
Hmm.
Nepal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it was incredible. And so, and then also with that, because I still had this very like sciencey mind that still wanted to understand, you know, the nature of reality through those languages. I started going deeper into quantum physics and the nonlinear sciences and nonlinear mathematics, and then started realizing that they're all speaking the same language when you go deep enough, the art and the spirit and the science. And this journey I was going on in Eastern philosophies, and it all started weaving together and became this book that I wrote on curvature, the science and soul of nonlinearity,
Yeah.
and
I love
and
it.
that woke me up essentially. It just yeah allowed me to come back, as spirit grandmother would often say, come back to your original curve. We
Uh-huh.
all have an original curve. So like the great spirit touched to the ethers and set a wave in motion when you were born.
Oh,
And
I
the wave
love
bent
that.
and bent and arched and folded and broke symmetry again and again until it became you.
Right.
And you're just this unique curvature of space and time, and you always have your curve. It's always expressing itself through you. And yeah, you forgot how to hear it, essentially, she would tell me. You went to school and they linearized you and boxed you, and you forgot your curve. She'd
Wow.
always
I love
be like,
that.
lean into it. Yeah,
Yeah.
lean into it. Just come back to it. Come back to your curves. So it was an entire year of just stepping off the line, coming back to my curve, and coming to understand that through the arts, through the spirit, through the science, until I felt, yeah, I had this awakening. I came into this higher recognition of my consciousness and reality and the nature of reality. And then I went back to school. And I
Okay.
went back to the box, and then I went back to memorizing and looking at reductionist biology, and
Right.
I was seeing everything as starting from the central dogma of a mutated gene causing all of your diseases,
Right.
and I just saw through it all, and I was like, I can't study this anymore. I can't do it
So I'm
anymore.
so curious about now that you've built this relationship with this being, do you know if it's uh, like an extraterrestrial or an ancestor? Do you have that kind of insight now?
Yeah, she definitely feels ancestral, but
Okay.
not necessarily from my own direct bloodline.
Okay.
So she feels like an ancestor, a grandmother, and almost like this kind of global grandmother of grandmothers.
Oh,
So
wow.
in the West African, like Yoruba traditions, there is a goddess named Nana Baruku, who's like more than a goddess. She's sort of the mother of the goddesses,
Wow. Yeah.
the grandmother of the Orishas.
Okay.
And when I received a divination from Melodoma Some, who's the West African teacher who I study, he identified her as a spirit who originated from the continent of Africa. But that's as specific as he could get. It was just, yeah, this high intelligence, he said, from the
Wow.
continent of Africa. So, yeah, I do relate to her as an African grandmother, ancient grandmother.
Yeah, she feels very, very wise and old, like ancient, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
That's amazing.
absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you went back to school and then where did things evolve from there?
And then I almost did not make it through my degree because I just stopped studying. I stopped participating. And I started just doing my own little studies on the side in holistic science and holistic biology. And that eventually led me to do a master's in holistic science.
Hmm.
So that was looking at things like chaos, complexity theory, systems biology, and mind body spirit connection. That was in England, actually, a place called
Wow.
Schumacher College. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
It was land-based learning, so there's only 12 of us living communally on the land. So it was a
Whoa.
really, really beautiful program. Yeah,
Wow.
really living what we were learning, and getting involved in like it was more traditional, like European traditional knowledges. So dealing with,
Okay.
for example, like Wolfgang Goethe's phenomenological approach for encountering nature. And so Wolfgang Goethe, German playwright and botanist, he actually challenged Newton's theories of light and
Yeah.
proposed a theory of light that involved light and dark together, not just light giving rise to the rainbow, but you need light and dark to give rise to the rainbow.
Wow.
Um, but he had a whole other approach to, yeah, approaching nature that involved opening up the whole of yourself to encounter the whole of the being that you're coming to know as
Yeah.
mind, body, spirit, soul. So yeah, it was a beautiful time of reclaiming um, my indigenous Celtic ways of knowing. And
Yeah.
so, in terms of an introduction, I also like to introduce myself based on the lands that my ancestors come from. And so I
Right.
do European, Western European, English, Scottish, Irish ancestry on my mother's side, and then my father's side is Bayesian and West African ancestry.
Wow.
So I spent that year reclaiming some of these traditional Celtic land-based knowledge systems, and then that eventually led me to naturopathic medicine.
Okay.
So got off that straight line towards the medical degree and to the holistic ways of healing.
Wow. So you did end up finishing medical school?
I finished naturopathic medical school.
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, I finished
Okay.
my undergrad in
Okay.
biology and then
Got
did the
it.
master's in holistic science and then did the 4 year naturopathic. So I
Wow.
still stayed on that academic track, but I just curved it a little bit towards
Right.
something more authentic. Yeah.
Right. Right. I love that. I love that. I always like have thought like if I knew that there was these paths to naturopathic medicine and Chinese herbal medicine and those kind of things, I would have totally went down that route. I went down the physical therapy route and kind of learned the myofascial unwinding techniques and those kind of things of the body. Um, but that was like the closest quote unquote I could get at that point in my life to those
Mhm.
kind of teachings. And I think it's perfect because I've gotten to work with a lot of last year I worked for a year with kids with autism and excuse me, and different um, ways of physical therapy and helping them, and that's really cool because I got to interact with the star children and but
Oh, wow.
but yeah, it's like it's interesting how spirit guides us in these ways. I always find it fascinating how it gives us
Mhm.
these detours, you know?
Yeah, like around that time as well, as I was trying to figure out my transition through school and towards naturopathic medicine, I also started working with a young boy who was nonverbal, and that was a huge impact on my trajectory. Was learning I could communicate with him nonverbally,
Hmm.
and it was the first time I'd had an experience like that. It wasn't full telepathy, but we were using like a communication board where I'd support his hand and he could communicate to me, um, and he would write these gorgeous poems that, at 5, 6 years old. But he spent his whole life in meditation, in silence, in the oneness,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then would be able to translate. And I think it was actually that work with him that probably was most significant around that time in my life to
Hmm.
open me up to like, oh, there's other ways of
Oh yeah.
knowing, and coming to know, and communicating. Yeah.
It's fascinating. Yeah, the younger generations have so much to teach the world,
Mhm.
and those kids in particular, I believe a lot of them are holding this like frequency of unconditional love, and they're just like little beams of light that all are holding down the planet, around everywhere. It's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, it's so incredible. I find because I've always been a huge skeptic. Like my
Hmm.
whole life, I approach spirituality with a lot of skepticism.
Hmm.
And so,
Which is
and
a
it was,
good thing, I think, in this
yeah,
day
it
and age.
is like it's the first step to belief.
Yeah,
But he was one of the first things where I was just like, I have no way to explain this. Like I
yeah.
just have to accept that this is real.
Yeah. Yeah, I
This
think
is happening.
the gurus and the yogis that have been practicing for so many years, the ones that can levitate and do all these things like produce coins out of their hand and powders, that's meant to do that, right? Where it's like I'm seeing it, it's real, right? It's in
Yeah,
my reality in this life I'm in this body, and there's no denying it, and it just like shatters all that logic and all that, m-
yeah,
monkey mind, like they say.
yeah, yeah. I know, absolutely.
Yeah, Yeah, it's
Yeah.
super, super fascinating. So then, what led you after that, after you received your naturopathic doctorate, and where did things go from there?
Yeah, I mean, I practiced as a naturopathic doctor for about 10 years
Hmm.
before I started exploring the African medical healing systems.
Okay.
Um, and and actually during those 10 years, I did also live for 3 years in Egypt, in Cairo. And so I
Whoa.
was connecting with these ancient African knowledge systems there.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually where I wrote the book. The
Okay.
book was written there, and it was channeled in part because of the land I was connecting to at the time, and some of the spirit technologies I was creating within my being to channel.
Yeah.
And then I was also pregnant at the
Okay.
time, and that also opened a portal for creativity and creation. And
Yeah,
so I
big
wrote that
time.
book in like 3 months. It just came through and all aligned. And then I had this book, and part of what inspired me to write the book was while I was studying for my naturopathic licensing exam, so the last exams of our schooling, spirit grandmother came through and she was kind of upset with me because I had gone back to naturopathic medicine thinking that this would be the career that was all about the real holism, the mind, body, spirit, and we would finally be practicing holistic medicine. But
Hmm.
the schooling of naturopathic medicine is very similar to conventional biomedicine
Yeah.
nowadays, has unfortunately become more like green allopathy. So you're still learning all the reductionistic sciences, and we don't talk about spirit at all in the profession, and
Yeah.
nothing that is an evidence-based medicine according to biomedicine. And so I just put my head down and just ground through. I was just grinding through that whole degree for 4 years. Just get it done, get the paper.
Right.
Um, and they came kind of knocking on me while I was studying for these exams, and I was memorizing all of these botanical medicines, all their chemical structures, all their indications, contraindications, and so forth. And spirit grandmother was just like, there is another way, child. Like, don't you remember? There's another way. She
Wow.
said, don't you remember the creation of beauty with love? You were there.
Hmm.
Remember when we first made you, and there's only one profession in life, and she would talk about it essentially being a profession of love, and
Oh, wow.
your only title in this world was lover, she said. We are
I love it.
carpenters, and how do you bring your love into form? That
Yeah.
is the only question you need to answer. How does your love differentiate into form in this
Oh
world?
man, I'm getting chills as you're saying that. That's so powerful.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then she's like, and then you can tell me the names that you've acquired, and then you can tell me all the titles and the botanicals that you know and memorize. But
Right.
first you need to tell me, what your love is in this world and how does it come into this world. And so it was this beautiful transmission that came to me, and I just like stuck it between some paper, a book, and went back to studying for my exams because I had these exams I had to pass.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I graduated and a couple years later, my husband at the time, we were in Egypt for his work. And so I was out of work and I was just kind of sitting doing nothing and emptying myself, I suppose. And then I opened up, that page again into this, invitation by Spirit Grandmother to answer that question, like, how does your
Mm,
love want to come into form in the world?
mm,
And then I started creating this book, and I thought, okay, well, this is maybe the first form that the love wants to come in. Let's
hmm.
just bring the art and the poetry and the science and everything together that you've been teaching me about curvature. And so that book was created. And then when we came back to Canada, I went back into naturopathic practice and was like, okay, I got to make money. I got to get my practice going. And the book got put aside once again. And it was just like, okay, back into, that track of work, and sustain myself. And then it was the crisis of COVID. That was the other awakening that happened.
Big one for the whole planet, right?
Big one, big
Yeah,
initiation that we were all going through, and not just COVID, but everything else at that time. George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, and in Canada, there were bones of Indigenous children that were found at a residential school in
I remember
Kamloops that
that.
also brought up a lot around colonization and the Indigenous peoples here, and so all these crises that we were coming into, and I was still trying to practice and see my clients one on one, pivoting to virtual, trying to make everything work. And, but the conversation started changing and people started realizing that their individual diseases and discomforts were not disconnected from these larger traumas and systems of oppression that we were within.
Hmm.
And they started making those connections that, oh, yeah, to be a healthy individual in this world, I need all the systems around me to be healthy as well.
Hmm.
And there's, yeah, no point just healing myself in isolation as an individual. No such thing exists.
Right.
Um, and so that's when I turned to the curvature book again, and because it's all about how do we come together in community, heal as a whole, bring the circular ways back together again. And I decided I would start literally just bringing my clients together in a circle to start
Wow,
healing,
I love it.
right?
I love
I
it.
mean, it's such a simple thing, but it's like revolutionary to go
Yeah.
away from that one-on-one clinical practice that we're so trained to do to like, let's just come together in a circle
Hmm.
and sit and talk and, figure out what needs to heal.
Yeah.
And how do we contribute healing to ourselves and the world at the same time? And yeah, that was one of the teachings from Spirit Grandmother. She had said at one point to me that you you will have to continue giving to yourself and giving to the world until giving to yourself and giving to the world becomes the same giving.
God, I love that.
Yeah, yeah, she's just full of it.
Yeah, I love
Just
that. I
like
love that. I want to
drops
talk to
these
her.
gems, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, so for a long time, my life had that duality of,
Hmm.
doing things for myself, giving to myself, giving to the world, working out in the world. And slowly, as I started bringing people together in circle, teaching these circular, non-linear ways of healing, I felt like, oh, now I feel like I'm healing in a way it's giving to me and the world at the same time. We're finding
Mm.
ways how can we contribute health to ourselves that also heals the systems around us that are
Yeah.
the actual root cause of our diseases. So we started having those conversations. And then part of those conversations was the recognition also that these circles are mostly white that I'm sitting in.
Mm.
And the naturopathic profession is 90% white.
Hmm.
And so there were all of these issues also within our profession, and that we were looking at around race and racism and the whiteness and white privilege of our profession. So in Canada, we have public health care for to go see a medical doctor is free,
Yeah, that's
uh,
nice. That's real nice.
but to see me you pay. So
Right.
I'm part of the private healthcare. I don't get covered by government benefits.
Right.
So naturopathic medicine has become more of an elitist form of medicine. If
Right.
you can afford it, you go see a naturopath.
Right.
Um, but it's so backwards because naturopaths are the nature-based original medicines of the land,
Exactly. Exactly.
right? Especially
Yeah.
for the indigenous peoples of the land.
Yeah.
There's a lot we can critique also in terms of how naturopathic doctors have appropriated the indigenous medicines of this land
Right.
and then rebranded it as naturopathic medicine and
Right.
sold it back to people at a
High
high
ticket
price.
item. Right.
Yeah.
High
So
ticket healing from the
there's
land.
all this work, yeah, all this work around decolonization and anti-racism that was going on at the time that made me look at myself too. And the fact that, yeah, I am half black, half white, but I've moved through this world mostly white, I would say.
Mm.
And I say that in large part, not just because I'm light skinned biracial, but the way I was brought up um, within a community that was largely white.
Hmm.
And often you identify with what you see around you. You don't see yourself when you look out. I
Right.
look out and see white, so I think
Right.
I'm white.
Right.
I'm like, this is who I am. And I grew up with both parents and my black father always around. But around that time, after George Floyd and all the chaos that was going on, I turned to my dad and my dad, I feel like you raised me to be white. And he said, well, yeah, I did.
Mm.
I did. Like, there was no thought about it, no like, well, of course.
Right, right.
Because his experience as a black man immigrating to Canada in the 60s was the more you conform to whiteness, the better it will be for you in this world. So he just taught that down, all those, yeah, colonial teachings that you
Yeah,
conform to. And so that really spurred me on all of these situations to want to go back and reclaim my Indigenous African knowledge
yeah,
systems and healing systems.
yeah.
And so that's when I started reading Melodoma Some, who's, yeah, the West African uh, teacher, healer, diviner from Burkina Faso. It's now termed the land of the Dagara tribe. And he's passed on to spirit world now,
Yeah, I was
but
gonna ask that. Okay.
uh, yeah, December 9th, 2021. Um, but when I first started reading his books, he was still with us on this side of
Okay,
the world. And
awesome.
I was able to receive a divination from him and had signed up to do a course with him, but unfortunately he passed before the course begun.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was when I turned to one of his longtime students, Rita Rackley, a bone woman, and I did the 9 months, or actually it was a 10-month initiation into these traditions, into the divination and cosmologies of the Dagara people,
Wow.
and
Okay. So I'm
started
really
bringing that in.
curious. Yeah, I'm really curious how the divination went with him in particular. Like, what was that like for you, sitting with this master?
Oh gosh, I was just beside myself
Mhm. Uh-huh.
the whole time. Just, and once he starts talking, he doesn't stop, and it was just this nonstop translation, essentially, of what my gifts are in this world and the medicine that I'm meant to be bringing into the world.
Hmm.
And it was really powerful because I had only shared very little with him um, about the curvature book and teachings that I've been translating from Spirit Grandmother. It was just like one sentence I said.
Hmm.
And then he just looked at the spread and just unpacked it all, and everything that he was saying was just a bing, bing, bing. Like it was just like, yes, 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 yes. This is
Wow.
all been sort of known in me for so long and made so much sense. And so, yeah, he pretty much laid out a map for me to then guide myself to bring this medicine out into the world.
Wow.
And so
That's so
that was
powerful.
huge, huge,
That's
huge.
so powerful. So, and then how long have you been studying these ways for now?
Um, I guess about 5 years. When was the pandemic? Yeah, it's about five
Okay.
years that
Okay.
I've been deep
Beautiful.
into these traditions. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I've finally been
Beautiful.
able to bring it into my clinical practice.
Hmm.
So,
Oh yeah, that's so cool to bridge it.
yeah.
So how do you bridge it? Like, can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, in two ways. So I still offer the community-based courses.
Uh-huh.
And so we come together now online, which I know is not quite the same as the in-person.
Hmm.
So I need to bring the in-person back. But right now we gather online in community, and I bring these teachings in. Um, and it's actually centered around the Dagara teachings, the whole course.
Hmm.
And then I also one-on-one in clinic with clients, I now offer divination as a way to diagnose the soul level imbalances
Mm.
that need to heal.
Hmm.
Um, so the conventional naturopathic assessment, we do a lot of mind-body
Hmm.
assessments, and we can run your blood work, and we do all the physical exams and
Right.
lots of questioning. I can figure out the organ systems and the functional medicine and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But we don't have a lot of tools within naturopathic medicine to diagnose the soul or
Hmm.
spirit or the
Yeah.
intergenerational blockages or imbalances. And so that's where the divination comes in, and then we get that full, complete picture of what's going on.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't realize that's in our body, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
all of these programs and ancestral traumas, they all get passed down,
yeah,
and a lot of times from the scientific perspective, it's in the DNA, right? But when we look at it from like our body and our body coming from our mother, from our DNA of our father, and all that like being shaped into this new vessel that we're in, the soul's in, right? And then in that regard. the different parts of the body, like the myofascia that connects everything, even the bones, the marrow and the bones hold these ancient codes and like aspects of self that we can shift, I believe, with intention, with our mind, but also with doing these deeper layers of work on ourselves. And these kind of practices just give more like of a path to how to do that, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's like being able to get into the spaces in between things to
Hmm.
see what's needing to heal. Um, because yeah, it's the genes themselves. Yes, there is intergenerational knowledge that gets passed down through the genes in the genome, but
Hmm.
it's not like the codifying genes that carry that trauma. It's the spaces between the codifying genes, the regulatory DNA, what
Hmm.
was once called junk DNA.
Right,
Most biologists just go, it's junk DNA. It doesn't code for any proteins, so it's just junk. But
right.
now we know that it's actually what does all the regulation in your genome are the codons in between, or the nucleotides in between.
Yeah,
Um, and that's what I see as the spaces in between the DNA where the ancestors come through and shape the patterning of the genes into healthy patterns or unhealthy patterns, depending on that trauma. But also the wisdom and knowledge comes through as well. So it's
yeah.
the intergenerational trauma that gets embodied, but we also have intergenerational wisdom and medicine that gets
Right,
embodied, which
right.
doesn't get talked about as much. But
No, not much at all.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What about the telomeres? What do you think about that with the telomeres? What do you think those hold? They're kind of
I
like
don't
caps,
know.
right? Like on.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I mean, I know they are linked to longevity, and the longer the telomere, the longer the life. But I don't
Mhm.
know what it's connected to, like
Yeah.
spiritually. Yeah, I've never. Do you have a sense of what it is?
I I mean I have all these different theories, but I think that the DNA that we only use such a small percentage of our quote unquote brain, and also the DNA strands are capped. And I think that there's a way for us to uncap it
Mm-hmm.
with meditation, with our intention, and with like really focusing on that. I really believe that a lot of things are really possible in this reality. But I'm kind of extreme with that, because
Yeah.
I do know, I do know that people are able to levitate and like I said, have these gifts where they're doing things that are completely mind-boggling to the majority of society. And so, I've noticed in myself that when these patterns from my parents, even just one generation in front of me, right? They their programs and patterns I've been able to like really dig into and upheave and then really shift. So if I'm able to do that, then what's happening on that molecular and DNA level? It's like something has to be shifting there if it's happening in my mind, in my brain, in my neurological and nervous system and pathways. It's like uh, there it's all connected. It's all fractal, right? I think that there has to be a shift on those like tiny levels if there's a shift in the larger levels because it's all one.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's something I dive into in the second month of the course. We go deep into fractals. I love
Mm,
studying fractals, especially on a biological level,
yeah,
and how, again, that one differentiates into the multiplicity, the many, but still maintains the essence of that one. You still have all your DNA in every cell
right,
that never, differentiated from that original one,
right,
and that fractal intelligence, how it plays out through the body, and not just in form, but in the dynamics. Like we have fractal rhythms in our heart, fractal rhythms in the brain waves, fractal rhythms in the pulsing hormones. And
hmm,
when all those fractal rhythms are in sync, you have coherence of the
right,
whole.
right,
So, yeah, yeah. And
yeah.
there's so much we can do to engage that and bring that coherence.
Yeah, what about like 12-stranded DNA? I'm sure you've heard about that, right?
I've heard about it, but I'm not familiar
Okay.
with it.
Well,
Yeah.
it's something that uh, a lot of people in the spiritual community talk about, like activating your crystalline body and your 12-stranded DNA, and how these new generations of kids that are coming in have a lot of that activated already, and they have
Mm-hmm.
these timelines and blueprints of really like hugely awakening the masses, and also bringing in the 5D reality into this timeline, and breaking down all these old corrupt systems that were built on manipulation and ego and um, control, right? And really bringing it back to that love frequency, and really uh, opening that gateway for the planet to live in harmony with the planet, in harmony with each other, without these desires and wishes for war and suffering, and everyone having the bare minimum, food, shelter, water, clean water to drink, those kind of things. And so yeah, there's those aspects of the 12-stranded DNA, which is these upgrades to the next generations that are coming in.
Mm-hmm. Is it literally like 12 strands, or what's meant by the 12, or just more
Yeah,
complex?
so the 12, it's really interesting. Even as a kid, like that number in particular was very like stood out to me. And with Nikola Tesla, he always talked about the 369.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the 12, it connects to that in some way. And in the 12-strand DNA, it's like this balanced structure of the DNA that is uh, really our full potential as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Anunnaki were, or the people of Egypt, as I'm sure maybe you can share a little bit about that, like where in Egypt when you were there, there's so many of these quote unquote gods, but that the Anunnaki supposedly created, and they were working with the DNA and with modifying to create this slave race, basically, which is what we are. And they were there to mine. From my understanding in my research with it, they created us as a slave race to help them gather gold, because on their planet they needed the monoatomic gold for various reasons. And so that's why gold is so highly valued to this day in our society. And there's all these ties back to gold. But when you look at these deities and Egyptian gods, a lot of them have different animal heads, and some people believe that they were these genetically modified beings that were a blend of Anunnaki and crocodile, Anunnaki and dog, Anunnaki and cat and lion.
Yeah.
That the species that were here already,
Yeah.
and so those became like these the next generation, basically, of these modified beings.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of refined it to us because we were the most balanced genetically, and the most like easily manipulative for their ways. You know what I mean? Uh, so that's my understanding of it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm really curious, like when you lived in Egypt, did you sense any of that? Did you connect with any of that energy?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't aware of most of this knowledge back
Okay.
then when I was there.
Okay.
It was like very early on in sort of my awakening to these ancient knowledges.
Hmm.
Um, and so what I was most drawn to, though, was Isis and the teachings of
Okay.
Isis, the Isis cult. And And interestingly, it was right at the same time as the Islamic State, ISIS, was also on the rise. So this is like
Uh-huh.
2013, 2014.
Yeah, I
So
remember that.
yeah, and it was such a powerful time because you could feel the tension of, this acronym being both, representing both. Um, this evil and the goddess.
Yeah.
And I remember really feeling drawn to reclaim Isis, the goddess, and that intelligence and resurrecting her knowledge back into the world. And so I spent a lot of time studying her and her teachings.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an interesting fractal connection there with the mythology of Isis and Osiris.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so with that mythology, yeah, Osiris's jealous brother Seth chopped him up one day and spread 12, I think it was 12 pieces, interestingly,
Yeah,
of him. Yeah.
I think so too.
There's that
Yeah.
12 again over the Nile to get rid of him because, Seth wanted to have the throne. And Isis, who was sister and wife of Osiris,
Mm-hmm.
went and collected all the pieces of him to resurrect him, bring him back together again. But in one of the tellings of the myth that I came across, every time she gathered a piece of him, she always envisioned the whole of him in each part
Mm-hmm.
before putting him back together again. And then she had to recreate his member, his penis. That was the only part she couldn't find.
Mm-hmm.
So she had to, yeah, bring that creativity of her being into what she was creating of him, and then breathe the breath of life into him. But that part where it was talking about, yeah, the whole of him in each part needed to be envisioned first, and that fractal intelligence had to be
Mm-hmm.
brought back
Yeah.
before the whole him could be resurrected and brought back, and she could, yeah, claim his seed and give birth to Horus, and then he passed after. But
Yeah, I mean,
but
I
that
think that's a very
teaching,
important piece
yeah,
is that bringing the life into each piece, and that there's across all different cultures you have this, like Ganesha, for example, was created, out of clay, and then he was brought to be this being, and there's all these stories, right, of this, and Jesus resurrecting. So this is all, I believe, the abilities of these masters that
hmm
had either close to that 12-stranded DNA, or had that like full capacity of navigating this reality and all the gifts that they had with it. So I think we're coming back around to that. I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime, but I have visions of it,
yeah.
happening again.
Yeah, and the way I see it is maybe like less of a literal 12 strands, but an increasing of the complexity of the protein, gene
Of
protein
the
interaction.
helix, yeah, it like
Uh,
would interweave more, and
but not even just the physical form, but the expression of the genes and the proteins.
right,
And
right,
so, like in the same way that we have almost the same number of genes as an earthworm, but we're
right,
far more complex because there's more complexity of relationships among the genes
right,
and the
right.
proteins. So I could see like a higher order complexity of conversations among the genes that gives
Mhm.
rise to emergent abilities.
For sure, it's also like the brain, right? And all the curves in the brain that we have, and all that surface area because of that, and that allows us to have the intellect that we have as humans versus a worm, right?
Yeah.
So that's really interesting too. What I'm really curious about is when you were in Egypt and you were channeling the grandmother, what was there any practices you were doing to prepare your body to open yourself to that channel besides doing the art? Like, was there anything that you learned like to this day to like really bring her in or like get out of the way?
Absolutely. Yeah, I just recorded a video on this actually, on how
Nice.
I turned my body into a spirit technology, so I can share that with you. Um, but essentially, yeah, using a combination of movement, breath, nutrition, plant medicines, all of the foundations of land-based medicines and spiritual-based medicines that, and being pregnant as well.
Mhm.
So it was because I had tried to write this book probably like 10 times in the past. I did try and it always failed. I always came up against a block, something, it just wasn't working. And as soon as I became pregnant, I started um, showing up differently for myself for the baby, I suppose, and actually practicing all of my medicine
Mhm.
for once.
Right.
It's like one of those classic tales of the doctor not practicing their own medicine. And, I realized that, yeah, I haven't actually like put into practice everything
Right.
all at once before. And now I had this new motivation for this being inside of me. And so I was doing my regular breath practice, which is like I'm familiar with Heart Math
Yeah.
Institute and Joe Dispenza and all of that. And so
Mhm.
essentially, yeah, like a coherence frequency to just bring my heart into coherence. Um, which sometimes I'll use like Wim Hof or different breath practices, but essentially you're building that coherence of the heart. Um, and then from the place of the heart, also calling in and amassing that love. So when she talks about, how do you bring your love into form? First
Mhm.
of all, you just need to remember you are love. And so
Right.
she's like, you got to come into the consciousness of love and feel it, not
Mhm.
just in your head, but like actually feel. And through the breath and through the intention of the heart. And there's this poem that she said to me once that I'll often repeat almost like a mantra. And
Mm.
she said, there is hope in love. She said, there's always hope. Know this intimately. There is a way to liberate your heart such that all things flow as they should, such that all hearts lead to liberation. This is
Mm.
love, my dear. This is love.
I love it.
Repeat that until I start to feel it and feel her love and feel my love and invoke that love. And then as I'm doing the breath and as I'm building that sense of love, I also perceive love as the gravity of the universe. And so, the curvature of space and time being gravity, but also the love of the universe that guides everything, into being and attraction. And so when I have that mass of love, I can also visualize bending space time down through me. So it's like
Wow.
you're creating a portal.
Yeah.
So you can, once you're connected to the universal love through your heart, then you can bend gravity, bend space time through you. And it's almost like visualizing a torus
Yeah.
structure. Yeah, and so there's this central column coming through and then energy going around. And light always follows love in my universe. And so once I bend love down, I bend that gravitational field, then light follows. And then I can visualize the light coming in. And it's being in that state and just being in pure presence in that state. Like there's nothing else you need to do at that point. Because
Mhm.
that's, for me, is like, that's how I center it all. And when I'm doing that, I feel like I've come into my location in the universe when I'm
Mm.
in that state. And I heard someone say once that, yeah, we each have a home address in the universe, and the universe is always mailing you gifts and knowledge. But if you aren't at home where you're supposed to be, you're not receiving your gifts. It's always being mailed to your address.
I love
And
it.
so when I do that practice, I feel like, okay, I've landed home.
Uh-huh.
And then things come to me.
Yeah.
So it's the law of attraction or the secret, if you will, but instead of the co-opted new age way of, yeah, put a Ferrari on a vision board, it's more bring yourself home to your place of
Mm.
belonging in the universe, your basin of attraction of love. And then everything is attracted to you that's meant to come to you to carry out your gifts.
I love
And
it.
so all the knowledge just started to come to me,
Hmm.
the teachings, and a lot of it had been written in pieces in the past, but then it just started to come through. And part of that practice was also um, cleaning up my nutrition, my exercise, my movement, just living a healthy lifestyle as well, and
Hmm.
everything we know about how nutrition and movement can increase your heart rate variability, which means you're increasing that coherence of the heart. So your heart does become a bigger basin of love and attraction
Hmm.
through nutrition and movement and chanting, anything that regulates the vagus nerve, as we know,
Hmm.
will also increase heart rate variability, will create that mass of love. Then you can then more space and time, more light through you, more comes to you. So it
Hmm.
was a practice like that that I was doing on a regular basis, and then
Wow.
continued making the art. And again, the art also is an important portal for spirit to come through as I'm drawing the curve art. Then she'll often come through. And being pregnant and connecting with those teachings of Isis and
Hmm.
the deep feminine and Mott as well, those deep principles of organization of life. Um, Really awakening those within my womb and that womb intelligence, which is,
Wow.
yeah, the creator intelligence.
Yeah.
Like we have the creation intelligence inside of us.
Yeah.
And being pregnant just woke that up so
Hmm.
that, yeah, I was creating so easily. And the
Wow.
book just came into form. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super powerful. And then I'm just curious, what happens when do you feel when she leaves, like when she's done transmitting, like what does that feel like?
I wouldn't say I feel her leave. Because I'm not, I want to be careful that I'm not like channeling. Like there are people that channel
Right,
and
right.
their voice changes, like they become that person.
Right, right.
She doesn't become me. I don't
Oh,
become
okay.
her in
Okay.
that sense.
So she's
It's
more like you're
more
hearing her talking to you. Okay.
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So it's more a stream of consciousness. It's still my voice I'm hearing,
Okay.
but a stream of consciousness is coming in faster than I can think of it. And often things come through that I'm like, don't even make sense to me until I sit with it. And so
Right.
that's when I know it's her rather than me.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
there's times when I write as well, and I'm writing my own ideas, but then there's like a knocking almost that I'll feel when she wants to come through and
Right.
start to explain. It almost feels like a knock, and then I listen, and then it's like this, yeah, stream of words
Well, you
written.
just said something that I think is fascinating for me to think about, which is my own ideas, right?
Mm,
And I think about that like what is my ideas, right?
yeah.
Like how and like where do ideas come from, right?
Yeah.
Like and I noticed that uh a lot of some of these masters, they talk about that none of the ideas are ours or mine, right? And so that also is a concept that I'm really like sitting with and
Mm,
contemplating because I think it's fascinating, right? Like uh from some of the people I've talked to, it's like some of the ideas come from benevolent beings, some ideas come from malevolent beings, some ideas come from the angels, some ideas come from our spirit guides, some ideas come from beings that want to help us grow and expand and bring that new earth, right, to this reality, and others are the opposite, where they want to bring it down and tear it all up. So I've been practicing just listening and being like, okay, is this benevolent or malevolent? And if it's malevolent, then I let it like leave as quickly as it comes. And then uh, I I also notice that sometimes I pick up energy from other people, and as I'm going to the grocery store and things like that. So then like that practice of clearing my energy every day and feeling what it feels like where quote unquote my center, my energy is, and then from there I can navigate what I've picked up or what's come in. So that's a
yeah.
really fascinating topic for me as well.
Yeah. It's a lot of discernment that you
Yeah.
need to, yeah, figure
Yeah.
that out. Yeah,
Yeah.
because even yeah, that question of what are my thoughts, because I remember yeah, during early on in that awakening process of hanging out with the monks and Taoism and whatnot, I had this experience of the mind field where I realized, oh, my thoughts are not just inside my head, my mind, but connected to this larger field, and they come in but then go out. It's like the thoughts are more like condensations of matter that's connected to the quantum field, and And then that's finally how I could understand telepathy and these other, strange things that were happening.
Yeah.
In some sense, yeah, I have no sense of ownership or my thoughts, but when they do come into my being and my head, then I work with them with my own essence to give my essence to it, I guess.
Right.
My
Right.
essence of
Yeah.
expression comes to it. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, so yeah, that's super fascinating. Uh and so uh yeah, I mean my next question is, can you explain what divination is just for people that are really new to it? And then maybe we can transition into talking about the way that the Dagara people work with divination.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, divination as a concept is found across many traditional indigenous cultures. And
Hmm.
so if you have like tarot card divination or runes or tea leaf divination, so usually it's some way of using some kind of material technology to connect with the other worlds,
Hmm.
and bring messages through for this world.
Hmm.
And in the Dagara traditions, it's less about like foretelling the future or anything like that. And it's more about understanding the now, what's going on
Mm.
right now in terms of patterns of imbalance or disorganization within your energetic system, within your relationships, your life that need to be reorganized and rebalanced
Yeah.
in order to bring about the healing or whatever it is that you're seeking.
Hmm.
And a lot of it is about going into the other world, finding a way into the other world to connect with the ancestors and the elemental beings and the interdimensional beings
Hmm.
to receive their medicine and knowledge for what needs to happen in this world. And then it always ends with a prescription of a ritual that someone needs to do in order to carry out the healing and the
Hmm.
medicine.
Hmm.
And so, the main teacher I learned from Melodoma Some, um, he would really place a heavy emphasis on divination is about doing. It's not just about receiving information, but what you do afterwards and the carrying out of the ritual to actually make the medicine happen.
Like the integration of it, right? Like actually putting it into action versus just hearing it, right?
Well, doing the actual ritual that's prescribed. So you'll
Oh,
be
okay.
prescribed a specific ritual that you'll need to do. And
Okay.
unless you do that, nothing's going to happen, essentially. And if
Okay.
we have, that's how you actually do the interaction with the unseen world is through the
Okay.
ritual that gets prescribed that then allows the healing to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
And the
then,
ritual, I'm sure there's hundreds, if not thousands of rituals probably, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
So they're all elemental based rituals. And so the way the divination is done is there's a five elemental wheel that we toss bones and stones and cowrie shells and little trinkets onto this wheel.
Hmm.
And then where they land, you read what it's saying, essentially. And so there is this five element wheel that is written, painted on a cloth. So this is the divination cloth.
Okay. So those that are just listening, it looks like a peace sign in the
Yeah,
middle,
it does, eh? Yeah. So
and
those
we
are the
have
five
blue.
elements.
Yeah, we have blue on top, white in the bottom left, green in the bottom right, red in the bottom, and then in the middle there's a gold circle with the curvatures in it.
Yeah. So the
I love
blue is
it.
water, the white is mineral, the
Uh-huh.
red is fire, green is nature, and yellow is earth.
I love it.
Yeah. So those are the five elements. And then, yeah, there's a bunch of cowrie shells and bones. And so with my eyes closed, after someone comes to me and we've set sacred space, then I'll just ask, what's on your soul
Hmm.
these days? What are you moving through? What questions do you have for the ancestors? And we'll put that up to the ancestors, and then I'll just spiral the stones and bones around until I feel like I got a yes, we're ready, and
Hmm.
then take my hands off and then read where things land. And some items have very specific meanings. Others have meanings in relation to what they fall next to or where they land. So it's
Okay.
really complex. It's almost like the way your cells read the meaning of genes, which
Uh-huh.
is why it becomes really interesting when you look at, yeah, the genome level of how information gets, translated on a biological level, and what happens in divination, because there's many possible meanings for
Right.
genes as well. But
Yeah.
what that gene is in relation with will determine what it actually becomes in the
Right.
body. And same with the divination. Yeah, all these items have different meanings in relation to one another. Um, and a lot of them will be telling you about what your gifts are, what your gifts and role is for your community and in this lifetime, what you're meant to really be focused on bringing out into the world. Um, and a lot of it also has to do with understanding the elemental imbalances. So each element also has different meanings as it
Hmm.
relates to your own personal being, but also what may be imbalanced in the spiritual beings around you. So which elements you might need to go to bring balance back to yourself.
Okay.
Um, and there's a lot of like ancestral messages that will come through as well.
Yeah.
If there were traumas in your ancestry, a couple generations ago, sometimes that can come through and reveal something that needs to be healed in order to heal 7 generations back. And
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. So can you give an example of a ritual that could be prescribed?
hmm Yeah, so there's well, one of my favorite rituals to prescribe, I guess, would be a homecoming ritual. And
Okay.
so the earth element at the center, the earth represents the home,
Hmm.
and it represents the mother archetype, or the warrior protector archetype. And it also represents our sense of belonging, identity, having abundance and nourishment in our life. So if people come and they're struggling in any of those areas with relationship abundance, financial abundance, any abundance issues, or an identity issue, or they don't feel like they belong, a lack of belonging, or maybe there's mother or father issues around protection and nurturing. So some of that might come up, and depending on where certain items land, will indicate that a homecoming ritual is
Mm.
needed.
Hmm.
And in the Dagara traditions, homecoming rituals, some rituals can be done on your own, but homecoming, you need your community. So you
Mm.
gather a community of people together, and often involves burying yourself in the earth.
Oh, okay.
Get into the earth, you can keep your head above. And as you're buried in the earth, then there'll often be other things that are poured onto you, like libations of water. You might, as part of the ritual, it might also say that you need some waters of reconciliation to be poured onto you to heal and reconcile. And so you might go to the waters first and the water spirits and bless the waters and call on the spirits of the water that you're here to call in their reconciliation abilities, and you grab that water and pour the libation of water over the mound of earth on this person. And you might be asked to put some dates and honey and flowers and sweet things as well, and coins and whatever represents abundance also. And
Hmm.
so, they'll be adorned with all these other nature medicines, and usually people will be around them also singing and drumming and chanting. And a big part of the homecoming ritual is also allowing yourself to be sort of adored by your community, and
Mm.
and your identity being seen and known. So
Mm.
Melodoma will say that there's two things people really crave in this world: is the recognition or realization of what your innate gifts are.
Right.
Everyone really craves to know, what are my gifts, and then for those gifts to be confirmed and received by your community,
Yeah.
for them to be of value. And
Hmm.
so the community will come around and tell that person who they are and their value and their gifts and their identity as it relates to them and what they've been able to bring
Mm.
to them. So we're just helping people really come home to themselves and their identity and purpose within the whole. And then usually there'll be a big welcoming party, and they'll come out of the earth and again singing and dancing, and we'll welcome them home. We'll bring them down to the water, clean them off and wash them off, and put on some white clothes or something that represents purity and cleanliness, and then have a big feast
I
with
love it.
food in abundance. So that would be a
Yeah.
homecoming ritual. Yeah.
I love that. That's so powerful. I've
Mhm.
never heard of it something like that, but I can feel like the power of it. I was just imagining and really feeling the energy of that. That's powerful. Have you like been the one in the earth in something
No,
like
I've
that
not.
before?
No, no, I've
Okay.
helped to perform a homecoming for others, but I've not done it myself. No.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's amazing. That's super powerful. I can just feel that because uh there's also like a grounding effect happening and then being seen and loved and heard and witnessed and really like celebrated, it's just there's so much beauty in that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and coming back to the womb of the mother and that birth
Right.
and
Right.
that healing. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, so many of the West African traditions, healing traditions, are communally based.
Hmm.
There's no such thing as healing in isolation. So a lot of the
Mm.
rituals, most of the rituals will be done in community like that and involve, yeah, others identifying you for who you are and your gifts.
Wow. Wow, I love that. I love that. And what it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like if there's a disbalance, let's say in the fire element, you may
Mm.
need to spend more time with the fire, right? Or with the water, right? Like if there's a disharmony in some ways, then going into the waters again, or right? Like, is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, the fire element represents our connection to the ancestors.
Mm.
And so the fire is all about also like being a clear channel and a vessel for the ancestors, having visions. It's all about your sight and visions and dreams and being able to see into the unseen.
Hmm.
And so and we're each born into this world in this cosmology with a particular gift. So if you're born into this world as a fire person or of the fire clan, then that's one of your gifts is to be the seer and the channel for the ancestors, for your community. And so if
Mm.
that's blocked in some way, then yeah, the whole community suffers, but then you will also suffer and your
Hmm.
physical diseases will manifest if your eyes are not being opened properly to the messages of spirit. So yeah, you
Wow.
might do fire-based rituals, which might be working literally with fire or with your dreams or with the ancestors in other ways that you can open up those portals and become a clear spirit channel.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. And then what about the water? What does that represent?
Water is all about cleansing and reconciliation,
Okay.
really deep cleaning and reconciliation and healing. And if you are a water person, actually, what is your birth date? What's the last number of your year of birth?
Of the year, 8/6.
Yeah, 86. So you're water.
Oh, okay.
So six is
Interesting.
water. And so the role of the water person in their community is usually as like a peacekeeper and justice maker and reconciler, someone that brings other people together and heals and reconciles.
Mm,
So you'll often have that kind of role in your community. And then you'll
interesting.
be able to also connect with the water spirits. And so the candomblé are the water spirits, and they're like these interdimensional beings. And so it would be your responsibility in your community to go to the water, connect with the spirits, bring that knowledge back to your community, do water rituals, have water shrines. And so everyone has a specific role based on their elemental gift and their role
Mm.
in the community. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting because astrologically I have so much fire.
Mm,
Like Sagittarius is fire. I'm a fire tiger by the Chinese calendar. I have all this fire.
yeah.
And then when you mentioned that I was water, uh, all that resonated, but it's so interesting, these different elements, how they play out in all these different parts of our formation of our identity and confirmation of our role and our
Mm.
purpose. It's very interesting.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating. Yeah, because it's also a way that societies can organize themselves coherently and
Yeah,
sustainably, in balance. And this idea that not any one of us has to be everything or do everything or heal everything in the world. Because I think that's also what gets overwhelming with our hyper individualized neoliberal society. We look at all the problems and it's like, how can I heal everything? I can't. So we just shut off.
right.
But in a lot of these traditional indigenous cultures that are clan based, you have a very specific gift and role. And as long as you do that and everyone does theirs, then we can show up and we can heal. We can really
Yeah,
balance systems. Yeah.
absolutely. I think that's a piece that's been somewhat lost in our Western way of living. It's uh, it's interesting that you talked about bringing the people together during COVID. That's what we did. We brought a circle together of people to meditate on the beach in San Diego, and it grew to like 300 people when everybody was
Wow.
so chaotic, you know? And so it was right by the ocean, and then we sat in a circle and all the, and it made the meditation so much more powerful, and it also allowed for that community. Then we would go get breakfast together, and then we'd go, everyone would bring their offerings and share, every day we had a different free class on the beach, it was just like it's so interesting that in these moments of chaos, how sometimes it can really bring people together and really like allow us to step into our purpose and into our role as what we're here to do and shine our light. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's really interesting. So from the date, right, of the last two numbers of the year, are you adding those together, or how do you determine which element it is?
It's just the very last number that
Oh,
determines
okay.
it. So yeah, in the Dagara cosmology, it's just a five number cosmology, one to five, and then repeats again, six, to 10 or to nine. So for the five elements, each element has a number or two numbers that go
Okay.
with it. So for
Okay.
water, one and six are the numbers with water.
Okay.
But interestingly, if your birthday is it around December, around the change of the year,
Hmm.
January? It is.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, you could also be fire as well because fire is two and seven. And so often, yeah, there's a transition. If you're like a December, January baby, then you transition from like the one to the two or the six to the seven
Ah,
between the water and the fire.
you can kind of shift.
Yeah,
Okay, that makes sense. That gives me chills in my body when you said that too. Yeah,
yeah.
it's yeah, I'm right at the end of December. So, uh
Okay, so you're
um,
almost a seven. You're almost born
right,
then.
right.
Yeah.
And from what my understanding, do you know about the Indigo children?
I've heard about them, but yeah, I don't
So
know too much.
they were like the first wave of
Hmm.
these new Earth beings that came in, and then after the
Hmm.
Indigo Children, it's the Crystalline, I believe, and the Rainbow Children are coming in now, and so there's like these blocks of 10 or 12 years when these children come in, and
Hmm.
87 was supposed to be like the first year of the Indigo Children, but I've always really resonated with that, so it's interesting. I feel like I was like right
Yeah,
there as
6, 7.
yeah,
Uh-oh,
yeah,
6, 7.
yeah,
You're part of the phenomenon.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, water and fire.
Cool. Cool. And then so one is water, what's two?
Two
Fire.
is fire. Yeah.
Okay, and then what three?
Three is mineral. I
Okay.
think. Here, I got my numbers here. Sorry. Three is actually nature. Three and
Nature.
eight. Yeah, three and eight are nature.
Okay.
Yeah. Four
And
and
then
nine are mineral.
four, nine are mineral, and then five,
Zero and five are earth.
earth. Okay. Okay. Really fascinating. Really
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so that represents like your general role for your community in terms of like the clan that you would be within,
right.
um, which would also help determine like the elements you're responsible for taking care of as well. So it's also a way to live sustainably on the earth. Each of us has an element, so you would be
Mm,
responsible for making sure the waters stayed clean and people had abundant water, but also you'd be the fire keeper, make sure the fire kept going.
mm-hmm.
And then there's the nature people take care of the animals and the nature, would maybe be the plant medicine people, the witches, those that work with food and nourishment in that way. And yeah, the minerals are the storytellers and the knowledge keepers and those that would, yeah, keep keep the minerals strong. So everyone has a role for taking care of the earth as well as one another based on
Yeah.
that role. But then you also have gifts that are in addition to your role that are
Uh-huh.
also elemental. So it gets really
Okay.
complex.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
So which one are you?
I'm water as
You're
well.
water.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Number one. Yeah.
Okay, and then can you? share a little bit about the gifts that go with it?
Yeah, and so each element, um, so for the water, the gifts do have to do with that reconciliation and healing.
Okay.
Like often the water healers are people that work more deeply in the energetic healing aspects and the deeper reconciliation and healing.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then the mineral gifts have to do with communication and storytelling and being able to remember original instructions and having those types of gifts. The fire is you're gifted with visions and insight and being able to see into future past, being able to channel spirit. Often they are the medicine, like shamans and whatnot of the community. The nature gifts have to do with like creativity and the arts and will often be like the magicians and the witches and those that work with the plants and plant medicines and animals of the community. And then the earth would be like the mother and father archetypes, the nurturers, the hunters, the warriors, those that help others come home to themselves and find their identity. So those are kind of the gifts that go with each of those elements. And so you can be born into this world as a water person and you have the role of bringing justice and peacekeeping and reconciliation to your community. But the divination might have an item that lands in nature saying that nature is your gift. And so while your role is reconciliation, peacekeeping, you might use humor and creativity as the way that you bring peace and justice into
Mm,
your community,
mm-hmm.
right? Or you might have the gift of minerals, so you bring more storytelling and the remembering the ancient instructions is what you bring to that role of healing and reconciliation.
I
Or
love it.
if you are a fire gift, you might bring visions from the ancestors. So yeah, they kind of layer on top of one another, all the roles and gifts.
I have you ever seen it where it's like um all five gifts, like somebody lands on all five gifts, or it's usually just one?
No, because there's specific items. There's a snake vertebrae that represents the gifts you carry in your
Okay.
own bones for your own healing. Where that lands will be one gift. And then there's another little charcoal piece that represents other gifts you carry from the other world into this world. So just where those two pieces land will tell us about your gifts. And
Cool.
then your birth date tells us about the role in general.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
mean, we all have all within us. Like we have
Right.
all elements. They all
Right.
need to be in balance. And so you can call on the gifts of all of them.
Right.
But in particular, you're born with a particular gift.
And that ties in with what you were saying, using this form of divination to figure out your purpose, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
So it'll give us more clarity in terms of your gifts, your roles in your community, but then also there'll be items that might show us that there's something blocked and your sense of gift is not where it's supposed to be right now. It's all the way over here and it's supposed to have landed in the earth and it's in the water and we need to get it back to the earth where it belongs. And
Hmm.
along the way, there'll be other items that tell us what's in the way that we need to clear and unblock so that you can get home to
Oh,
your
yeah,
gift.
that makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. That's
Yeah.
that's really cool. That's super cool. So, so it sounds like you're using all different types of stones, rocks, shells, charcoal, bones. Uh, is there anything else I'm missing?
There's coins and I don't know, there's all sorts of little things. I have a little pendant that represents the third eye. There's a thimble. There's a little figurine that represents you, where you land in this
Okay.
thread. There's a stone that represents the womb and the menstrual blood. There's items for each stages of your life, childhood and into your cronehood. So yeah, all of those pieces, it might be a locket or another type of ring or yeah. And
Wow.
so a lot of them have been pre-prescribed that you have to have these items. And then there's other items that we're encouraged to bring in that are personal to us, maybe little gifts or things that we've been given that have spirit meanings for us. And so
Hmm.
we'll incorporate a little bit of our own medicine along with the standardized items.
Okay. Okay. Really cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
And then, did you ever study with any of the Celtic divinations?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Have you?
Okay. No, no, but I feel like I'm not sure, but maybe they worked with runes as well,
Hmm.
or I would
That's what I'm
assume,
familiar with. Yeah,
yeah, because that
runes
whole
and
area, is known for, Europe and the
yeah,
Vikings and to me that all kind of connects with the runes.
exactly. Yeah, I
Hmm.
believe so as well. And
Okay.
then different tarot readings within the Wiccan and pagan.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, it's fascinating because these different forms of divination are getting more integrated into our society. Like, you see more people pulling angel cards and tarot cards and doing runes and these kind of things. And uh, maybe people don't think about it as divination. They just think of like
Mhm.
receiving messages and but I think it's happening more and more in today's society as people become more aware that there's these tools available for guidance and for uh, figuring out where we can be uh, to maximize our potential individually as well as communally and as a planet, and or as a country and all those kind of things.
Yeah, one of the things I find really fascinating is to look at like all of the elemental or cosmological wheels from around the world,
Hmm.
and how they're all used for different forms of divination or at least organizing knowledge around medicine and healing, and
Hmm.
the similarities that you'll
Yeah,
find. And so like this is a five elemental wheel that's very similar to the traditional Chinese five element wheel. And even the
yeah,
meanings of the elements, and in Chinese medicine, each of the elements connects with a different organ in the body, a different emotion, a different spiritual attribute. And you find the same things in these Dagara traditions. And it's like they never actually talk directly to one another, but it's like any land-based culture that's making medicine off the land in communion with spirit seems to come up with these similar types of organization tools for
yeah,
divination and healing. And yeah.
yeah. I think it's fascinating because you can take somebody from Australia, and then take somebody from Ireland or Siberia and from Peru, and you take the medicine people and the shamans, and they're gonna all have very similar messages and very similar like approaches to these to life and
Hmm.
these deep connections to nature and to the elements and the spirits. And I find that absolutely fascinating because now with in today's society we have Instagram and we have the internet, but for thousands of years we didn't, and those people all cultivated very very similar practices and ways of communing with the higher beings and with the elements. And to me that just shows that there's these higher beings that are undeniable, and these ways that we've as a society, as a world, right, like so many people have dissociated from that and dissociated from even themselves and their body, and just yeah, it blows my mind how many people still eat McDonald's and knowing all the studies about these poisons and these crazy aspects. It just shows how important it is for humanity to really wake up and see the truth.
And dismantle all the systems of oppression that
R-
cause the addictions and the
Exactly. Exactly.
Because what
Yeah.
I find most of the time, when clients come in to see me, like they know they shouldn't be eating these things or having a sudden, like they want to be eating well, exercising, they enjoy healthy foods, they enjoy, but they're not doing it. And
Hmm.
then that's always, yeah, the paradox or conundrum. And as well, there's addictions, there's the ways that our lifestyle is organized to not be for health. And so whatever the 1%'s doing, to structure and organize this divisive neoliberal culture is not conducive for people to show up in healthy ways. And then they get blamed. Often my clients will think, well, there's something wrong with me. I have a self-love problem. I don't love myself enough. I'm not taking care of myself. And I always have to like intervene and be like, no, 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 you're not supposed to do this on your own for yourself, ever.
Mm.
You're
Hmm.
always meant to be in community. You're meant to be nourishing your community and by reciprocity be nourished in return,
Hmm.
which is, yeah, one of the most common things I'll hear is a single mother, who has maybe co-parenting, childcare, and she's like, yeah, when my kids are with me, I make beautiful meals. It's so easy to cook for them and make healthy meals, and I eat well. And then when they're not with me, I just, I have a bottle of wine and a bag of chips, and
Hmm.
like I just can't feed myself. What's wrong with me? And I keep having to, reassure people because we're never meant to be eating on our own by
Hmm.
ourselves. We're not
Yeah.
meant to feed ourselves. It's
Yeah.
not a self-love problem, it's a community love problem. We
Yes.
aren't loved in community any longer, and the individual suffers. But then we get gaslit into believing that it's our problem, like it's our fault as an individual.
Hmm.
Something must be wrong with me.
Hmm.
Can't feed myself. So no,
Right.
the system is not designed properly right now. But yeah, when we lived traditionally indigenously on the land in community, we ate in community, we fed one another in
Hmm.
community, which is how it's meant to be.
Yeah, I love
So
gathering people together to like make food together and play
mhm,
music and sit around the fire. That's like some of my favorite ways to commune, It's just
yeah,
it's the best. There's just especially if it's out in nature,
mhm,
like there's just this deep peace and like you were saying with the vagus nerve, there's just a relaxation and everyone is it's things come up, right? But then they can be resolved because
mhm,
there's more groundedness, there's more presence, there's more connection to the earth and to the elements and
yes,
yeah, it's just the way we need to be living. That the city life is rough, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Are you in the city?
I am,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
I'm
not
in the
easy.
grid, yeah, in the matrix. But yeah, until we recircularize, I say, until we recircularize all these other systems of society, politics, economics, everything, it's going to be hard to be a healthy individual and not eat McDonald's. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, that healing of the self and the systems around us at the same time, that's so, so key.
Yeah. Yeah, the people the majority of the people I talk to that eat McDonald's, they say, "Oh, it's just convenient. It's so easy. I could just go and grab it and do the rest of my tasks." And I'm like, "Yeah, but what's the cost? Like it's
Yeah,
detrimental, like extremely
yeah.
detrimental." Now there was something that came out. I didn't dig into it, but they found like 2% human DNA in the burgers at
Oh
McDonald's.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So who knows where that's coming from? But
right.
so yeah, it's crazy. But um, was there anything else about the elemental wheel you think would be important for people to know about?
Oh, what else? I mean, that's the main teaching of it as a foundation for the divination, but
Hmm.
also for, yeah, prescribing your role and purpose within community.
Uh-huh.
And then to figure out, yeah, how to work with each of these elements with your rituals.
I noticed on the around the wheel you had like handprints and things like that. Is there any meaning to that, or is that just more decorative?
Yeah, it is intentional that we always put our hands and our feet, outlines of our hands and our feet on the cloth as we're making it. So part of the making of the cloth is a ritual in and of itself, and where
Uh,
you stand over your wheel
uh-huh.
and your belly over the belly of the wheel. So the earth at the center is the mother and the belly of the wheel, and it's a way
Mm.
to almost. Are you familiar with like Nut, the Egyptian goddess of the night? She's like her belly goes all over the sky, and the
No, I'm
stars
not.
are her belly. Yeah, it's this beautiful image of just a woman that's essentially standing over the whole earth, and she's got her
Wow.
hands and her legs, and her under her belly is all the stars of the night.
Oh,
And so it's a
wow.
way that we kind of christen our cloth and put ourselves over it, and then the imprint of our hands and our feet stay there.
I love it. I love it because it's so intentional and you're like bringing your essence and your energy into the cloth, into the divination map. Wheel, I guess. Yeah, that's really amazing. That's really amazing. Yeah, I think uh, another topic we wanted to talk about as well was diversifying spiritual spaces, right? Like I've ever since I was a kid, I grew up in Maryland, in Bethesda, Maryland, when I first came to America, and it was so diverse. You know, a lot of the parents of the kids in my school worked at the NIH, the National Institute of Health. That's where my parents worked. And so I had friends from Bali and I had friends from from Sweden and Africa and you name it. Like it was just like 30 kids in my class, all different ethnicities and races. And I found it fascinating. And one of my favorite days of the year was when the school would open up the gym and they'd bring in the parents and each parent would have like a table and they would have a different country that they would represent. And the kids would walk around with a booklet and they would ask the kids a question about that country. And then they would educate them and give them a sticker with the flag of that country. So there was like all these layers of that. And though that day was one of my favorite days of the school year because I got to learn about other cultures and I got to connect with, all these different ways that people lived and the only thing that could have made it better I think was if they maybe they did bring in like traditional foods from their country, that would have
Right.
maybe there was something like that, but that would have made it a little bit better, like the cherry on the top. Um, but I think that you know a lot of that is um, it's easier in some ways with the social media, and at the same time with the algorithms, it kind of like keeps
Mm,
people in their bubble. And if somebody's like super extremist, they're gonna be fed that kind of content. So it's
right.
available as long as the individual's open to it, but it's also I think more than ever right now, there's this acceptance and opening and people striving to learn and understand more, especially with the people in the conscious community that are really awakening and
Mhm.
wanting to learn more and find different avenues.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's something that I think most of my experiences in the spiritual consciousness raising communities have been in white spaces.
Hmm.
Um, Here in Ottawa, even though we're a very diverse city,
Hmm.
we're a very diverse ethnically, culturally, but it seems the spiritual and consciousness spaces are very white. And
Interesting.
so that's something that started to like really, yeah, impact me after a while. And then, definitely, yeah, after Black Lives Matter and a lot of those uprisings and people looking at, race and racism and diversity and how do we diversify spaces, there definitely was more of an attempt to be more inclusive and diverse and create spaces for specifically, Black women and Indigenous women and BIPOC and whatnot. Um, but what I found often would happen is like people interpreting diversity as, well, as long as we have people of all different colors here, then it's diverse.
Hmm.
But still inviting me into a square, I still have to conform to a white box, but I'm a
Mm.
black face in a white box.
Hmm.
Whereas like true diversity is, well, are you going to allow me to bring my African cosmology here? And can the
Mm.
African cosmology be what founds and organizes the foundation of what we're going to be doing and healing and learning? Or
Mm.
am I just a black face in a white box that, yeah,
Mm.
I'm conforming to you? And sometimes folks were not seeing the distinction between that.
Right.
Um, or the idea that, diversity need not mean sameness, or sorry, equality need not mean sameness. So we talk about equality, and a lot of folks will think of it as like everyone being the same, or giving, the same policy given to everyone as equal. And
Uh-huh.
it's like, no, 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 no. Equality doesn't need to mean sameness. We can be different, but equally valued.
Right.
And you can allow my difference to be here and be able to see from a different lens and a different worldview and value what the African can bring
Yeah.
that the European does not have access to.
Right.
Sometimes so much so that they don't even know they don't have access to it.
They don't
So
even
they
know
don't
it
even know there's a
exists.
whole other, yeah, there's whole other cosmologies and ways of knowing that
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what's been interesting, is trying to like wake people up to knowing there's entirely other ways of seeing and knowing and practicing medicine and being in spiritual community that they might have no idea about. But if
Yeah.
they don't intentionally not only invite Black people, but invite the African knowledges
Hmm.
and spiritualities and cosmologies, then
Hmm.
yeah, you'll never know.
Yeah.
It's,
No,
uh,
it's I think that's a really important distinction that you made, right? Like not just having the faces, but also bringing in the cultures and the different aspects of divination and practicing and praying and all that, right? Like that, those pieces I think could benefit so many people in so many ways. Like just the divination alone, right? Like the Dagara people, divination would could help so many people, right? And really just expand, right? Like it's all for me, it's I want to keep expanding, not contracting, right? And like continuing to expand what's possible, what's available, what's what's out there, right? Like so it's fascinating. It's fascinating. And I think you're doing it with your presence, with your you know, intentionality. I think the more you put yourself out there, the more it'll just spread, you know, and be shared. And that's a huge intention of the podcast too, is to bring these types of awarenesses and insights in different walks of spirituality from all over the planet, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and really knowing that like we each have things that the other needs, and we each have things we can give,
Right.
and things that we need from the other as well.
Hmm.
And so in many traditions, are you familiar with like the eighth fire prophecy or the seven
Mm-mm.
fire prophecies? A lot of traditions around the world have prophecies for these times right now that we're in.
Hmm.
And so First Nations and some of the Native American tribes speak of the eighth fire prophecy. And one of my teachers, Martin Millen, he's a Ojibwe, he's taught it to me as there's well, the original prophecy talks about how humanity will come to a fork in a road at this point in time, where we can continue down the path of materialism and capitalism and destruction, or a spiritual path of
Hmm.
holism and healing. And each epoch of time is a different fire. So we're in the seventh fire right now, and we're about to enter the eighth fire, which is this new time of healing if we choose that path.
Mm.
And the prophecy talks about how the Red Nation will lead the way, but then the cultures from all around the world in all four directions will come and follow that path and teach their
Mm.
knowledges to one another so that we can find this new path forward. And it's based on the medicine wheel of the First Nations with the four directions, the red, white, yellow, and black, which, sort of gets reduced to the four races or four corners of the world. Of course, there's more than four. And not all of my Asian friends like to be called yellow people. So honoring the
I
fact
don't know
that, yeah,
anybody that does.
right? Like black folks have reclaimed black.
Right.
At one point it was racist to call a black person black. You couldn't say
Right.
that, but now it's like we've reowned that. So you can call
Yeah.
me black. White people, maybe white. A lot of indigenous people will refer to themselves as red, but
Hmm.
it still can be inappropriate also. And
Right.
so
Right.
there are issues with, yeah, reducing race to color, but with the four directions and the symbolism of that medicine wheel to symbolize all colors, the rainbow of the world coming together.
Yeah.
But in those teachings, each corner of the world, each culture has specific gifts that they need to bring around the fire in order to light this eighth fire and bring it home. And the gifts of the white nation is the mind and fire. And actually, Dave Cushane is another elder from Turtle Lodge, Sangking First Nation, Sangking First Nation. And he talks a lot about these gifts of the white man being of the mind and fire, but how it's just run out of control into a pathological fire and pathological mind because it's not been grounded in the gifts of the indigenous, which is
Yeah.
the earth and spirit. And so the Red Nation and the indigenous have the gifts of the earth and spirit. The African nation is the gifts of body and water. So we are an
Mm.
embodied being, and Africans are very embodied. And
Yeah.
if you think of it, we were sold for our bodies also, right?
Yeah.
That is the
Yeah.
value that we have in this world, as even though it was devalued. But the expressiveness of our bodies and using the bodies as spirit technology, these all originate within these African cultures.
Hmm.
And then the Yellow Nation is about the air and emotions, the gifts of the
Mm.
emotions and the air and the breath, and the Eastern philosophies of, having the meditations and the breath practices. And so yeah, and it's interesting because Melodoma Some speaks of the same thing, that these gifts being the same gifts that he came up with. I don't think he ever talked to Dave, but
Hmm.
it's from both of these nations talking about the different corners of the world and how we each have specific gifts that we're meant to bring. But
Yeah.
those gifts are only going to be healthy and whole and good when in balance with all the other gifts.
Yeah.
And yes, we need the white nation's gifts of the mind and fire, but we also need the body and water and the air and the emotions and the earth and spirit to come
Yeah.
together. And each nation needs to teach one another their gifts around
Yes.
fire. And
Yes.
then we can find this new path forward and
Right.
elevate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it really resonated with me when you said the Red Nation kind of leads the road because you have to have that foundation of the relationship to the planet and the earth and the elements in order to kind of build off of that foundation. And, my favorite way to pray is in the Sweat Lodge. And this is going to be my fourth year of my Vision Quest. And so I feel like I've there the native ways, especially in America, have resonated with me, with my heart on such a deep level, and I've been following these ways since 2012, and it just feels so resonant with my soul, like my soul craves to be in nature, craves to be, in these practices and ways of praying where we're coming together, going into the womb, singing our hearts out and deeply praying for the world, for family, community, whatever the prayers are individually and communally. And yeah, there's these relationships that get built with the water, with the fire, with the womb, with the mother, with the, that are so deeply part of that way, that are just so beautiful to me. They just really they're part of me now. Like they're just something that I value very highly.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just it. And the way it was taught to me is that when we start following these practices and teachings of the Red Nation or the Native Indigenous peoples, it will help bring us back home to our own ancestral medicines and knowledge systems. And then we
Yeah,
can bring that forth to have something to give back. And so it's
right,
the idea, yeah, don't show up to the potluck empty-handed. So
right,
make sure you're bringing something too. And in
right,
order to know what we're bringing, sometimes we need to be led back there. And yeah, that Red Nation is like, hey, yes, come sweat with us, be with us, Vision Quest, and but not to like appropriate our medicine, but
right,
to come back home to your own,
right,
so that you can have something to bring.
right. Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's just it's tough with a lot of the um, European people, and lineages because so much of that has been lost.
hmm
And like I have a deep craving to connect back to those ways with my lineage, which is from Russia, and you know, but the only people that I know is like that some shamans in Siberia that are still practicing those ways. But besides that, it's not really part of the culture anymore. It's like the Christianity has really expanded into the whole nation. And so yeah, there's a part of me that's reclaiming and coming back to that. Uh, and it's a journey. It's a journey. And I also, follow and listen to spirit where I need to go and who I need to be with. And one of the intentions is to invite a Mongolian shaman onto the podcast and speak with him. That's the closest I have right now to a
Right.
Siberian shaman. Even though it's different, it's the closest, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see how it opens up. I'd love to eventually have a Siberian shaman on and share those ways, and I have had some friends that have gone to Siberia and studied with the shamans
Wonderful.
there, and yeah, my one buddy described the shaman as like this magical being with a staff with all crystals, and he had all these crystals hanging on his, and in furs, and I was like, wow, I want to meet that guy,
Right? That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
Hopefully not the QAnon shaman, but
yeah,
I just
yeah,
had that picture right now. Come, I was like, no, not that shaman.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, Europe is full of rich, rich histories of shamanism and other forms of spirit connection and
yeah.
interdimensional healing. But yeah, it was lost and colonized so long ago.
Hmm.
It's hard to reconnect with. But it is what we're being called back to remember.
Yeah,
That is,
yeah.
yeah, such important medicine to reclaim.
Well, Dr. Laura, it's been such an honor to have you on today. Thank you so much. I
Thank
think I
you.
think we could do a part two easily, just about medicines and other things. So you're always welcome back on the podcast. We can schedule a second one if you'd like. And
Thank you.
thank you again so much. It's been an amazing episode. I've learned so much, and it's such an honor to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a nice non-linear journey. I loved it.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of curves in the journey. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you so much. And until next time. Take care.
Okay. Take care.